Yeah.
Ever look up at night and get that Mars feeling? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what's really going on up there? Yeah, so today we're doing a deep dive into Mars, going way past the rovers and all those sci-fi movies we all love. It's funny though, right? Like I remember one time I was telling my friends about this theory, how Mars is actually a giant potato. They all thought I was crazy, but hey, I like to think outside the box, right? But okay, enough goofing around. We got some serious science to dig into, so let's go. First up, the whole red planet thing. I mean, it's practically its middle name, right? But here's the thing: Mars is actually more like uh, rusty brown, all thanks to iron oxide. Basically, like a planet-sized rust bucket, which honestly, when you think about it, makes the whole image of Mars way more interesting.
Yeah.
And speaking of interesting, have you seen pictures of that Martian landscape? I mean, talk about epic. You've got volcanoes that make Mount Everest look like a little hill. Canyons would make the Grand Canyon jealous. And don't forget those polar ice caps. It's like Mother Nature decided to throw a Martian landscape party and invited all the coolest features. But, okay, buckle up, because here's where things get really mind-blowing. Scientists think liquid water actually flowed on Mars.
Mhm.
And not just like a little puddle. We're talking ancient rivers, lakes, maybe even oceans. So what happened to all of that water? Well, some of it's frozen in those ice caps, but most of it seems to have escaped into space. It's like Mars had this incredible water park, and then bam, someone pulled the plug. But what if, just hear me out, what if some of that water is still lurking beneath the surface? And what if it's not just water down there? What if there's something else, life?
Yeah.
I mean, they've found traces of organic molecules in the Martian soil. It's not proof, but it's like finding a little clue that makes you want to keep searching, right? Okay, now let's talk about that Martian air,
Hmm.
or should I say the lack of it. The atmosphere is super thin, like way thinner than my patience when the internet's acting up. We're talking about 1% of Earth's atmosphere. So yeah, no casual strolls on Mars without a spacesuit. Which reminds me of this one time I tried to convince my friend we could build a DIY spacesuit out of cardboard boxes and duct tape.
Yeah. He wasn't exactly impressed, but hey, girl can dream, right? But okay, back to that thin atmosphere. It also means the temperatures on Mars are kind of dramatic, like freezing cold at night, but potentially balmy during the day. It's like Mars can't decide if it wants to be an icebox or a sauna. Now, scientists think there were a lot of volcanoes on Mars way back when, which might explain why the atmosphere was thicker in the past. So maybe Mars wasn't always this cold, desolate place. Maybe it was more like Earth, with flowing water and maybe even life. It's like a giant puzzle, and we're just starting to put the pieces together. Oh, and I almost forgot Mars has these two little moons, Phobos and Deimos. They're not like our moon, which is all smooth and round. These guys are more like lumpy potatoes tumbling through space. It's like the solar system had
Yeah.
some leftover bits and just kind of threw them together. But hey, don't underestimate these space potatoes. Phobos, the bigger one, is actually getting closer and closer to Mars. And eventually it might even break apart, creating a ring system around the planet. Can you imagine? Mars with rings. It would be like Saturn's cool little brother.
Now, of course, we haven't just been staring at Mars from afar. We've sent a whole bunch of robotic explorers over there, from the Viking missions back in the 70s to Curiosity, which is still roving around today. These spacecraft have sent back some incredible data. It's like having our own little Martian paparazzi snapping pics and spilling all the secrets. Oh, and remember that whole face on Mars thing? You know that blurry photo that everyone thought was a giant alien face? Well, it turned out to be just a weirdly shaped mesa messing with our minds. Which I guess just shows how much we want to believe right, especially when it comes to the possibility of life beyond Earth. Speaking of life beyond Earth, let's talk about the future of Mars exploration. We're not just sending robots anymore, we're actually gearing up to send humans. Can you imagine? The first human steps on Mars, the planting of a flag, the awkward space selfies. It's going to be epic. But living on Mars, that's a whole other challenge. We need to figure out how to grow food, create breathable air, protect ourselves from radiation. It's like trying to survive on a deserted island, but in space. Except the island is red, and the only coconuts are made of dry ice. Well, yeah, humans are pretty ingenious. We figured out how to land on the moon, build underwater cities, even create self-driving cars. So why not Mars, right?
Yeah.
Just imagine the possibilities. We could become a multiplanetary species, spreading our knowledge and maybe finding other forms of life along the way. So what does this all mean? Well, for starters, Mars is way more complex and dynamic than we often give it credit for. It's not just a red dot in the sky. It's a whole other world with its own unique history, geology, and maybe even a few hidden surprises. But here's the big question, right? What if we find like actual proof that something lived on Mars? We already know there was water, and we found those organic molecules I mentioned. So it's not totally crazy to think that maybe, just maybe, there were Martians hanging out up there. And if they did exist, what would that mean for us? Like, would we have to rewrite all the textbooks? Would we finally have an answer to that age-old question? Are we alone in the universe? It's enough to make your head spin, right? I remember when I first heard about the possibility of life on Mars. It's like, bam, my whole world shifted. I started looking up the night sky differently, like with this sense of wonder and possibility. But okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we start planning our Martian vacations and packing our bags, there's still a ton we don't know. But that's what makes it so exciting, right? The journey of discovery, the thrill of the unknown. You might be thinking, okay, Mars is cool and all, but like, why should I care? Well, besides the whole mind-blowing possibility of alien life studying Mars, it can actually teach us a lot about our own planet. It's like looking into a mirror, but a mirror that's been through a lot, like a really old, dusty mirror that's seen some things. For example, by studying how Mars lost its atmosphere and all that water, we can actually get some clues about climate change here on Earth. It's like a warning sign, a reminder that even planets can go through some rough breakups. And maybe, just maybe by figuring out what happened on Mars, we can find ways to prevent those same things from happening here. Plus, let's be real, exploring Mars is just plain awesome. It's the ultimate adventure, right? Pushing the boundaries of what we know and what we're capable of. It's like that feeling you get when you reach the top of a mountain you can see forever. Except in this case, the mountain is on Mars, and the view is a rusty red desert. And who knows, maybe someday exploring Mars won't just be for astronauts and scientists. Maybe it'll be something anyone can do. Imagine taking a vacation to Mars, hiking through the biggest canyon in the solar system, or skiing down a volcano that's 3 times taller than Mount Everest. I know it sounds crazy, right? But so did landing on the moon back in the day. And look how far we've come since then. So let's keep dreaming big, let's keep exploring, and let's see where this whole Mars thing takes us. Because who knows what we might find out there. Okay, but before we all book our tickets to Mars, there are some things we got to think about. Like, what about, the ethics of colonizing another planet? There's no, obvious life up there. Do we just get to plant our flag and call it home? And what if we do find those Martian microbes? Does that change things? It's like a classic sci-fi dilemma, right? We want to explore, we want to make contact. But what if we accidentally mess up some delicate ecosystem, or, even worse, wipe out a whole Martian civilization? I remember watching this documentary about how European colonization impacted indigenous cultures. And it really got me thinking about, the responsibility we have as explorers. Like, we don't want to repeat those same mistakes on Mars. Right? We got to approach this whole thing with humility and respect for the planet and any potential life that might be hanging out up there. It's a tricky balance for sure between our curiosity and our obligation to be, responsible cosmic citizens. So what's next for Mars exploration? Well, the short answer is a whole lot. Space agencies and private companies are working on some seriously ambitious plans. Permanent human outposts, Martian cities, maybe even terraforming the whole planet. It sounds like something straight out of a movie, but it's getting more and more realistic all the time. Think about it. We've already landed rovers on Mars. We're sending humans back to the moon. And companies are building reusable rockets that can make space travel way more affordable.
It's like we're at the beginning of this whole new era of exploration, and Mars is the frontier. And that's what's so exciting, right? The unknown, the possibilities. Maybe we'll find fossils of ancient Martian life or discover a whole ecosystem thriving underground. Or maybe we'll find something completely unexpected. Something that blows our minds and changes everything we thought we knew about the universe. So that's our deep dive into Mars, the rusty brown planet with hints of past water and maybe even life. The challenges, the potential, and the endless fascination. It's a planet that's captured our imaginations for centuries, and as we explore it further, it's only going to get more interesting. But I want to leave you with this thought: keep looking up at the night sky. And when you see that reddish point of light, remember, it's not just a dot. It's a whole world out there, full of mysteries, and maybe even some answers to humanity's biggest questions. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one exploring those mysteries firsthand. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and until next time, keep wondering.